Greetings, my beautiful lovelies. It's Emmy. Welcome back to another episode of Hard Times, where I explore food and recipes from times of food scarcity. Today, I'm going to be returning to the time of the Civil War, and I'm going to be making dandelion coffee. Now, it wasn't until recently, actually, on my trip to Gettysburg with my family, that I realized the importance of coffee and war. This gave the troops energy to march, to fight, to rally. It was so important. Now, generally speaking, the Union Army did not have to worry about supplies and provisions. All of that was kind of laid out in terms of railroads, and supplies were relatively plentiful. As opposed to the Confederacy, supply chains were often broken, and things like coffee were often hard to come by. So, soldiers were very resourceful and found many different ways to come up with a coffee-like drink. It did not contain the caffeine, of course, but at least it was a hot beverage that tasted a bit like coffee. So common coffee alternatives included acorns, okra seeds, dried persimmon, dried sweet potato, and dandelion roots, just to name a few. There's lots of ones that, chicory was a big one as well. So there are lots of different things that people use to create a coffee-like drink. Now, here in New England, we're coming well into spring and dandelions are everywhere. Please don't spray your dandelions. They are so incredible. Namely, if you have a beekeeper or bees around, or if you care about bees, that's one of the first nectar sources for the bees. They're really, really important. So my backyard is full of dandelions. I find them very cheerful. And historically, dandelions were very, very useful. You could eat their greens. You could make a tea or a tincture out of the roots. So the first thing you want to do is find a clean source of dandelions that are pesticides, herbicides, dog-free, and that happens to be my backyard. So I've got myself a cultivator. So let's go ahead and harvest some dandelion roots. If you haven't heard, these are my chickens. Let's visit them. Hi, ladies. Would you like to come out? The girls have just turned 1 year old. Hi. Hi. You gonna let me pet you? Yes. It's nice to see you. Hi. That's my Australorp. We've got 2 Rhode Island Reds. Come here, girl. And we've got the beautiful Buffs. Buff Orpingtons. All right. You guys gonna go peck around? All right. Enjoy your day. It's best to get young dandelions even before they produce a flower, because that means more of the energy has gone into creating the taproot, which is what we want in this case. Ding along the root, and we've been getting lots of rain recently, so the ground is nice and soft. Hi, girls. There's the taproot. That's what we want. You guys are gonna eat my dandelions? You can hear the bees buzzing overhead. Ooh, here we go. Yes, can you see that? This one's gonna be a good one. Nice. Look at that. Yes. So, doing it by hand, rather than using a cultivator, gives you longer roots, which is nice. So, I'm gonna snap off this top part right here, and then I'm gonna keep that root, which is already pretty clean. So once you've harvested your dandelions, I harvested probably about 25 of them, you're going to cut off the leaf. You can save these and clean them up and use them for dandelion salads. If you haven't seen that Depression era recipe video, I will put the link above and down below. Delicious, nice, bitter kind of salad, kind of similar to arugula, but comes straight out of your backyard and it's free. Oh, I should also mention, because it's dandelion season, you can also use their blossoms to make dandelion wine, which I've done. So look for that video coming up soon. It will take some time for the wine to ferment and to age. So I'm waiting for that to happen before I do the whole kind of tasting. So look for that video soon. But if you want to make dandelion wine, the time is now. So yeah, start picking your dandelions. Alrighty, back to this. So now you've got these nice roots. We're going to clean as much of the soil off of them as possible outside, bring them inside, and then use a scrub brush and again remove as much of the soil as possible and use copious amounts of cold water to get them nice and clean. Next, we're going to chop them up into small pieces. And then we're going to place them on a baking tray in a single layer. Then we're going to place this in a 200-degree Fahrenheit oven for an hour or two, depending on how big your pieces are. Every 15 minutes or so, you might want to give them a little bit of toss, turn them over, and you just want to get them nice and dry. So next we're going to heat up our oven to 350 degrees, place the pieces back into the oven, and we're going to roast these anywhere from 15 to 45 minutes depending on how big your pieces are and how dark you want your roast. I end up roasting mine for about 40 minutes, and they are very dry. So I tasted the root before I roasted them, and they were quite bitter. But it was so interesting. As I was roasting these pieces, a very sweet aroma started coming out of the oven. It smelled a bit like sweet potatoes. It was kind of amazing. My husband actually thought I was baking something. He's like, "Are you baking something sweet?" I'm like, "No, honey, it's just dandelion root." But it smelled so pleasant and lovely. And that only came out when I started increasing the temperature 350 degrees, and then those smells started to come out. So I'm very curious to see what this tastes like. So I've got 2 cups of water here. I'm going to bring this up to a boil. Add 2 tablespoons of my dried and roasted dandelion roots. 1, 2. Ah, it smells great. It already smells nutty, and that kind of sweet potato aroma is happening. So now we're going to let this boil for 10 minutes, and then we can have a cup of dandelion coffee. Alrighty, so it's been 10 minutes since I started boiling my dandelion coffee. I'm going to turn off the heat. I'm going to use a little strainer here and strain out the root, and it's darkened up a whole lot. Although essentially we're still making a tea. This has taken on the color of coffee. Kind of amazing. Alrighty, now for the moment of truth. Let's give this a taste. It smells really good. Not exactly like coffee. It smells roasted and nutty, toasted, sweet. A little bit like potato skins, which is not surprising because this did come from the soil. Alrighty, cheers! Wow. It is really similar to coffee in the sense that it has a distinctive bitterness to it, a very clear, pronounced bitterness. But it is very smooth. Definitely in the family of flavors of coffee. It doesn't have that aftertaste, that kind of lingering aftertaste of coffee though, but it does have its kind of distinctive bitterness. None of the acid though, it's not acidic at all. Depending on the type of bean and the type of roast, coffee can be quite acidic. This doesn't have any of that acidity. I've tasted coffee alternatives before, and this gets pretty close. It really captures the bitterness of coffee. Of course, I'm drinking this black. If you were to add some milk and some sugar, perhaps it would be more like what you're accustomed to, but I usually drink my coffee black. And this is quite similar. But that sweet potato smell that I was telling you about, that I smelled when I was roasting it, that's the kind of flavor you get. Sweet, potatoey, a little bit of the soil. It's good. I like it. The flavor is a little bit different. It's a little bit more popcorny, toasty, more almost bread-like than coffee itself. Coffee beans in itself, depending again on the roast and the type of beans, is really full-bodied. This is also a little bit thinner in texture in terms of mouthfeel. Again, that's going to depend on the style of roast and how strong you make your coffee. I'm sure I could have made this stronger as well, but in terms of just mouthfeel, this does feel a little bit thinner. But as a coffee alternative or substitute, this is a very good one, and it came just out of my backyard. So I'm definitely going to go back to my yard and pull up more dandelion roots to be making more dried dandelion root, because it is a great alternative to coffee. Caffeine free, but it's a hot beverage with a nice bitterness that is very reminiscent of coffee. I'm pretty impressed with that. So there you have it, a backyard coffee substitute that's actually pretty stinking good. If you got some dandelions around, why not try it for yourself? Alrighty, I hope you guys enjoyed that one. I hope you guys learned something. Be sure to check out the Hard Times playlist where I explore other historical recipes. Share this video with your friends. Follow me on social media. Like this video, subscribe, and I shall see you in the next one. Toodaloo, take care, bye!
Bye!